What's up, Renegades? Welcome back to another episode of the Just Winging It podcast. I'm Tattoo Tom. Today's episode is brought to you in association with Lou and Sue Alami over at Alami Realty. Lou and Sue, they're not just realtors, they're family. Please look at the comment section and hit the link to Lou and Sue Alami for all your loan needs, all your buying, selling, mortgage, everything. These guys are the godfather and the godmother of the realty world, including loans, buying, and selling. I can't say enough about it, and they are my friends. So in today's episode, we've got a really exciting guest. Her name is Kellen. And before we get started, though, one of the things I like to do is I want people to be seen as they want to be seen, and I want people to be heard as they want to be heard. So I asked Kellen to write a little bio, give you guys a little information about what she is. Then I'm going to talk to her, and we're going to find out a whole lot more about who and what she is. But let's go ahead and read for what she said, because I want Kellen to be seen as she wants to be seen and heard as if she wants to be heard. Kellen is a 19-year-old three-time cancer fighter and childhood cancer advocate. She is intelligent, determined, and adventurous. Her name means mighty warrior, and she is fierce, a true wild Irish rose. Kellen blooms and thrives in the harshest conditions. Kellen is a passionate athlete dedicated to continuous improvement. Eating delicious cuisine is her favorite hobby. And I'd like to put a little addendum in there. She's also Renegade AF. Welcome, Kellen, to the Just Winging It podcast. How are you today?
Hi, thank you. I'm doing well. How are you?
Good, I'm well, and thanks for coming all the way out here to the Two Feathers farmhouse. I know it's a bit of a haul. Tell us, where did you come from? How did you get here today?
Well, last night I snuck out of the halfway house to come home.
Okay.
So that I could come here today.
Okay. So let me be clear. The halfway house, what exactly is the halfway house?
The halfway house is what I call the Ronald McDonald House. The hospital is letting me stay in.
Okay.
It's close to the hospital, and they're not quite ready for me to go home yet because I still have a lot of follow-up care at the hospital, and they don't want me too far away. I live 2 hours away from the hospital. That's too far away for them.
Okay, so let me just practice a little reflective listening and repeat what you just said to me. You dead ass snuck out of the Ronald McDonald House last night so you could be on my podcast today, 2.5 hours away from Washington, D.C. Am I getting this correctly?
Yes.
So when I say she's a renegade, I mean it. So listen, we're glad that she's here today. I met Kellen, I guess apparently after talking to her earlier today, we had almost met a few years ago at one of the Cure Fest events that we held in Washington, D.C. Her and my daughter Shannon co-hosted the event. And at the time, I didn't really know anything about Kellen, but she showed up at the last rally we had at the National Cancer Institute, and I learned a whole lot about Kellen. And when she spoke, it moved me, and it inspired and it motivated me. And a lot of people often think that I'm a motivator and I inspire people to be proactive and aggressive when it comes to childhood cancer advocacy. And I got to tell you, she did that for me. So I was like, girl, I got to get you on my podcast. And so you see, she jumped through some hoops, snuck out around the house to be here today. So we're really glad to have you. So I got a few questions I want to ask you and just sort of get things rolling, and we'll just see how this goes. And we talk about all kinds of stuff. First thing I want to know is, tell me a little bit about your story. When you were diagnosed, where you are right now in your treatment, that kind of stuff.
All right. Well, I was diagnosed with acute myeloid leukemia when I was 15. And before that, my life had been sports all the time, nothing but soccer and beach volleyball. And then I thought, cancer is rare, but it's not it is a big deal, but I thought it was more like you just feel kind of sick for a while, they give you some meds, and you're on your way. So they're like, you have AML. So I said, okay, what are we going to do about it? And they said, well, we're going to do this kind of chemo and that kind of chemo, and you're going to be in the hospital for at least a month. And I was like, I'll be out in a week, tops. I'm tough. They're going to let me out. I'm going to be fine. I have a soccer tournament next weekend. But that's not how it went. I actually crashed, after my first dose of chemo. I was intubated, everything shut down, the tumor lysis just, overwhelmed my entire body, and when I was intubated, they were giving me all sorts of antibiotics that it turns out I was allergic to, and it caused TENS, which is toxic epidermal necrolysis syndrome. So my entire body was covered in like these peeling blisters. It's like Stevens Johnson's, but a life-threatening version of it. So what happened was nowhere near what I thought having cancer was going to be like. And I finally like made it up to the 4th floor, which is the actual like cancer and blood unit instead of the ICU. It took me a long time to get up there, but I did. And then I finished my treatment and they sent me on my way. I was good for about a year, and then we had to go back. Well, they saw some abnormalities in my blood work, and so we went back for another bone marrow biopsy and spinal tap, and they found more leukemia. So I had relapsed, and at that point, the protocol is chemo and radiation to get rid of it and make room for a bone marrow transplant. I am lucky enough because I'm white. There are plenty of white donors, so I had a lot of perfect matches to choose from, but a lot of kids actually don't, and I just kind of wanted to throw that out there. Minorities have a much harder time finding a bone marrow match, so if somebody out there is like listening, even if you're not a minority, just like everyone, it's not hard. You just call Be the Match, they send you the kit, you swap your cheek, throw it, send it back to them, and then you could get a call that you could save someone's life.
Good. Well, I'm going to interrupt you just for a second. We're going to put a link in the comment section to Be the Match. Be the Match is a place where you can go to get swabbed, to be a bone marrow donor, and you can help children like Kellen or young adults like Kellen, and particularly minorities who are underserved in many avenues in this country, but certainly when it comes to bone marrow transplants. So I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I want to make sure
problem.
there'll be a link in the comment section. Get swabbed, Be the Match.
Yeah, so I was able to get a donor, and I was lucky enough that he was also like very close, so they didn't have to like freeze, and there was less of a chance that I would react to some of the like preservation in the actual match. So I was very lucky that way. But after the chemo and the radiation, which were brutal, they not only like got rid of the cancer, but they like had to break me down and ruin my immune system so that I wouldn't fight against anything, any virus or any foreign like bone marrow that is coming. And so there was additional conditioning, and the ATG they gave me, it's kind of weird. So I don't really understand it fully because I'm not a doctor, but there's like a rabbit version and a horse version. I got the horse version, and my body completely like rejected it. It was awful. I was beginning to get tens again, and I was supposed to get 3 doses of it. The first dose like nearly killed me. So the next day they slowed it down and reduced it and gave me like Benadryl and fluids at the same time to try and like water it down. But they thought that this drug was really important. And then that night I actually threatened my doctor to die. I was like, if you give me another dose of this, I will die on purpose. It was an empty threat, but it worked.
Okay.
I didn't get another dose of it.
Nice.
And I got my transplant. It was going well. I had some gut and skin GVHD, but it wasn't too bad.
What is GVHD?
Graft versus host disease.
Okay.
Sorry.
I knew that, but I want to make sure everybody out there knows it.
Mm-hmm. So I had a little bit of that, and things were going well. As I was recovering, I had never really broken any bones or had any real injuries my entire life until now. But I was just walking down the sidewalk one day after transplant, and I like broke my ankle, I broke my wrist, I like tore 2 ligaments. It was like terrible just because the treatment had like beaten down my body. It wasn't like strong at all. I had no balance or anything. But things went well, and then I was able to play soccer for my school the next year. And then over last summer, before COVID, I got another call from one of my oncologists that the blood work didn't look good again, and I needed to head to Children's. And at this point, there isn't really a protocol for treating relapsed AML after a failed bone marrow transplant. So I sat down with the doctors, and basically they said, let's figure this out together. We don't know what's going to work or if it's going to work, but I'm going to try to give you options, and you have a lot more say in it this time because I don't know what's going to work. So I spent a lot of time going to the NIH and doing all of the prep work for a CAR T-cell trial that they were going to try in AML kids. They had just gotten the approval to move from rats to people.
Okay.
I would have been like the first person to get it. But with my doctors, we decided that this Resolve trial would be better. So that's what I did. I had more chemo and cranial and spinal radiation that got rid of the cancer. And this time, because COVID had hit, they didn't want to trust any sort of match from Be the Match. So it had to be someone I knew and someone like close. They also decided that it was probably a better idea to go with someone who wasn't a full match and risk the GVHD in hopes that there would be a little bit of a graft versus leukemia effect instead of, and with that would come graft versus me. But it ended up working out. My sister is a partial match. She donated some blood, and that was like some stem cell blood. That's what I got. And then they kept some of it, and I don't know what the scientists, doctors did, but they coached it up and turned it into T cells that target leukemia cells. And a few weeks ago, I got that infusion, and things are going well for now. But, you know, after this, who knows? Hopefully the third time's the charm.
Okay. Let's hope that the third time is a charm. Well, let me ask you like a serious question then. I mean, what would you say to some people, particularly some of the, I'm just going to call them out, the National Cancer Institute, who say that, we've made great strides in leukemia treatment, and they're always high-fiving each other on their Facebook pages about the improvements. And what would you say to people having gone through what you've gone through with one of the good cancers? I hate that, but you know what I mean. Mm-hmm. You probably heard that more than once yourself. What would you say to those people? You talked a bit about the treatments, and it's no big secret how I feel about chemotherapy and how I feel about radiation. But you talked about how you experienced things that you had never experienced in your life, these broken bones, these other things. So what would you say to people who seem to think that? Because after hearing what you just told me, I don't think that. If I didn't know anything about childhood cancer, all of a sudden my image of this cute bald-headed kid going to Disney World and getting better has been squashed. What you just told me, and I'm a seasoned veteran in the childhood cancer community, it was hard to hear that. So what would you say to somebody to really drive home the point that this isn't what, and I'm not trying to lead you here, I want you to speak, but what would you say to people who think this is sort of, is presented in a way that really you and I both know is not accurate?
Yeah, well, first of all, the NCI is lying to themselves, and they're lying by omission to everyone else. The cure rate for ALL is 97%, but AML is far lower, and it's the more rare one that a lot of researchers don't really want to touch. They don't want to go near it because they have to be afraid that they're not really going to do anything with it. So they're giving all the money to a disease that most of the leukemia money goes to ALL because they think that they're going to be able to make more strides with it because they've already seen so much progress there. Well, you're not seeing progress in AML because you're not funding it. We could be up higher with the ALL kids. The leukemia survival rate is very different based on your diagnosis. If you get ALL, sure, that's the good cancer. But AML is far different. It's a lot more aggressive. The relapse rate is significantly higher, and the survival rate is much lower.
So I guess a lot of people don't realize that, when you hear the word leukemia, you assume that that's one type of blood cancer, but it's not. And I want to be really clear. I didn't coach you or prep you before today's podcast, did I? So it's not just, you guys hear me talking about it all the time. It's not just me. I mean, this is a kid who is in the trenches with this treatment right now. And, she's a young adult who's telling you guys the same things that I've been screaming ad nauseum for the past 12 years. Here she's telling you that, they're not investing money in the research for the particular type of leukemia that she has. and her question was, she answered what my question might have been, why? And she said, well, because maybe they're not going to be as successful and it's not going to look as good for them. And that brings up a lot of questions. And I want to be really careful because I don't want to lead you in any directions, but I'm just practicing reflective listening and repeating what you just said to me. And if that's not enough to make you want to get off of your ass and do something to help children with cancer, or to engage with the National Cancer Institute to at least have them explain to us why in their brains that's okay, then I'm not sure what more we have to do, than to actually bring somebody in here. So I'm curious to know, and I'm going to ask you a hard question. So, I heard you say at NCI, you're out of options. So we're doing experimental stuff. And how does that feel for you? I know that's a hard question, and if it's you don't have to answer any questions, but how does it feel to be told by your doctors that you're out of options?
It sucks. It's kind of scary. You're like, well, shit, what now? Like, you don't even know what to do. What am I supposed to do? There are options, there are things they can try, but do I really want to be a guinea pig? No. Do I really want to die? More no. So I have to, try and hope that, even if it doesn't work, they learn something from it so that another kid doesn't have to die.
All right. Well, I appreciate that. I found that seems to be, I've heard that more than once, and that touches me in my heart to hear you say something like that. My daughter was somebody who said that too, as she says, well, maybe, hopefully they'll get some data, they'll get some information. And again, herein lies my frustration, and I don't mind talking to you about it because you showed up at the rally. I didn't send you an invite. You showed up there, so I know your blood pumps Renegade. Your heart pumps Renegade blood the same as mine. But we really got to get a handle on this because it's something that's been going on for 30, 40, 50 years, and we're not making any great improvements. And I don't know what else to do, besides light myself on fire in front of the National Cancer Institute to get them to pay attention. But that's a conversation. We could do a whole episode on the National Cancer Institute and the way that their propaganda machine is presenting. I would go ahead and say misinformation or certainly padded statistics. One of the things that bothered me after our rally, and I don't know if you're aware of this, I think we talked about it, is 2 days after our last rally where we were marching around in front of the National Cancer Institute screaming and yelling about how childhood cancer wasn't rare and how cancer in young adults wasn't rare. 2 goddamn days later, on their Facebook page, they had a post that said, since childhood cancer is so rare, or sorry, I'm misquoting. They said, since cancer in young adults is so rare, here's what you need to do. Here's some doctors that you can reach out to. What would you say to people who say that cancer in young adults is rare?
It's not. It just simply isn't. I don't know how else to say it. Someone under the age of 18, every day, 7 of us get diagnosed with cancer, and we become young adults.
So my daughter was a young adult when she was diagnosed with cancer, and I could probably name off the top of my head 100 kids, Cody, Dale, Sarah, so many kids who were young adults. I'm sure you have a gazillion friends that are young adults that have cancer that you've met throughout your treatment and things like that. So what do you think rare means? 1 kid, 2 kid? How many kids is in your mind acceptable as a number rare? Because I know what number is in my head. What do you think is an acceptable number of rare?
I don't know, but it's maybe if I'm
gonna go
25 kids a year get diagnosed.
Okay, that's what I'm thinking. Then maybe we call it rare.
Then
right?
It's rare.
Then maybe we call it rare. So I know that was a tough question. I apologize, but what I'm trying to figure out is what in the world the National Cancer Institute considers to be rare.
There are varying degrees of rare, and I think they really try to play it up.
Okay. All right. Well, let's move on a little bit just so that we don't sit here and berate them constantly. But, it's important to note that all of the billions of dollars appropriated annually for cancer research in these United States of America is cycled through National Institutes of Health and subsequently the National Cancer Institute. 96, well, it depends on who you talk to. But it depends on who is giving you the statistic. I've heard anything from 4 to 7% of that annual budget is earmarked for childhood cancers. So that means 90-some% is going to adult cancers. So I have a question for you. What would you say to the adults who have cancer who are struggling the same way that you're struggling, but are adults, what would you say to them? And would you feel? I mean, first of all, what would you say to the adults and asking about the disparity between the money that's appropriated?
Well, I would say that childhood cancer isn't just one cancer. Let's say you're giving us 4% that still needs to be divided up among 12 different cancers and over 100 subtypes of those cancers. That's not fair. I think that each of the childhood cancers should get a percentage of their own money. Does that make sense?
Totally makes sense. And I think a lot of people don't realize that there are a tremendous amount of childhood cancer. So if they're throwing that 4 or 7% at leukemia research, then you're leaving out all of the other cancers, the DIPGs, the Hodgkin's lymphoma, the rhabdo, all of the other ones are getting 0 or very little. And I think a lot of people don't realize that. So I'm glad you pointed that out. Like this girl, when I read her bio and she said she was intelligent, she wasn't kidding. You are, and I respect and appreciate that because, I mean, people look at me and they're like, this crazy old man, his daughter died, he's crazy, he's a knucklehead, whatever. But it's not just me. I mean, it baffles me that other people don't see it. And I can hear in your voice that it baffles you too. It just doesn't make any sense that this is the status quo. This is what's acceptable. And this is where your taxpayer dollars, the National Cancer Institute, is not being good stewards with that money.
I'd also like to point out that these are kids. We're losing out on way more. If the cancer kills us, on average, we're losing 70 years of life, whereas an adult who dies of cancer, on average, they say loses about 6 to 10 years of life. And the adults, they already grew up. They got a chance to get a driver's license, go to college, graduate high school, have kids, fall in love, get married, all these things that you want for your children and just for people to have. Like, kids deserve a chance to grow up. And the drugs that they're giving us are adult drugs because they don't have any money to research and create things for kids. And chemo is designed to target fast-growing cells like cancer, but in a growing and developing body, it's attacking the person more than it would in a fully grown adult.
Wow.
So our not fully formed bones and different our brains that aren't fully developed, they're being damaged a lot more than it would in an adult. And then we have to go back to our old life and try to live some sort of normal life with all of the horrible side effects treatment has left us with, like missing limbs, infertility. It's kind of hard to start a family when you can't have your own children. And you also experience a lot of processing issues and cognitive deficits because these are very formative years that we're missing out on. And we miss out on school as well. I was in the class of 2019, but I missed 2 years of school because of inpatient treatment. I couldn't leave the hospital, and I spent months in the ICU. How am I supposed to do school, even if it's online? I graduated with the class of 2020 because I missed so much school.
Wow. I've never, in all the years I've been doing this, I heard you just say something that it made my hair stand up and it gave me chills. In all the years I've been doing this, I've never heard it put that way. But what you just said was so powerful and profound to me. I heard you say chemotherapy in young adults and children does not just attack the cancer, it attacks the person. And I don't think I've ever, I'm about to cry, I don't think I've ever heard truer words. And I think that encompasses and encapsulates everything I've been trying to get across to people. And we're probably going to have to talk about that, you and I, because that really is, that's the shit. That's the real deal, is that, chemotherapy in the young developing bodies of children and young adults doesn't just attack the cancer, it attacks the person. I'm having a tough time with that, but I've never heard it. I knew you were going to be a good guest. You just blew me away. Yeah, it's rare that somebody blows me away, and you just did. I couldn't, in a million years, or in all the time I've been doing this, I've tried to think of a way to say that and you just said it as eloquently and as powerfully as I've ever heard it. And thank you for that. I want to thank you for being here, but I want to thank you for that. That really hit me hard. So let me ask you this, kind of shifting gears a little bit, because I got to catch my breath. That was pretty intense. So when we were talking about you being on the show, you said to me that you had called your cancer the Big D. So she sent me a text and she's like, yeah, so I started referring to my cancer as the Big D. And I want to make sure that if we talk about that it doesn't offend or upset any of your viewers. And fortunately, I was like, well, I've been doing this a long time, and my viewers and the people who are going to watch this podcast have been upset by me a gazillion times and offended by me a gazillion times. So what the hell does the Big D mean?
Yeah. So the Big D is the diagnosis.
Okay.
It's like, it changes your life. It's the Big D. You get it? And like, everything changes for you, for your family. The life you once had, you can never go back.
Right. All right. So I'm not going to illustrate why that might be offensive to some people, but I think you guys out there can guess. It cracked me up when you sent me that. I think it's pretty funny. I think that really does speak. That is what cancer is like, not only for, the children that are experiencing it, the young adults that are experiencing it, but for the families that are experiencing it, for the community that's experiencing it. I mean, it's the Big D from the day you're diagnosed until you're a survivor, or you're in remission, or you're not, and that's important to know. It's as cute as, almost not as powerful as the attacks the person line, but also cute. So let me ask you too this. I heard you touch on it briefly when we were talking about that, but what was it like? So we have a woman that works for us, a young woman that works for us named Lauren. I think you met Lauren. And she's our director of mentorship services. And one of her jobs is to help mostly young ladies as they're transitioning back into normal life after a cancer treatment, after cancer, has gone into remission, things like that. Now, it sounds like you've had to go and reacclimate, and then the cancer comes back and you have to go and reacclimate again. And so what's that like? Talk a little bit about what that reacclimation is like, because I know that you're a big sports person. I've seen pictures of you playing beach volleyball. I've seen pictures of you playing soccer. So what's it like having to go back? What does that feel like? What does that look like?
Yeah, it's really hard. I was used at first when I came out of the hospital. Once you're out of the hospital, everyone thinks it's over. Like, oh, you're good to go. You beat it. Great. Good for you. Perfect. You're normal now. But you're not. I still have, I even write them in my calendar as FU cancer appointments. They're follow-up appointments.
Okay.
Your life is full of them. You're always going back to the doctor. And it took me a long time to build up the stamina to be able to go to school for a full day. You're tired and you need naps, and standing up for a long time or walking even up the stairs in your house or across the hall, it can be taxing. And I went from being a top athlete, being looked at by D1 college coaches, to having trouble completing 10 squats. It was a huge sort of it felt like a slap in the face that I worked so hard to get so strong, and then cancer and its treatment just wiped it all away, sent me back to square one, and I had to restart. It also took away all my friends. But at the same time, a lot of people tried to use me as their little sort of prop to make themselves look cool on the internet or feel better about themselves, or look at me, I know this cancer kid. I'm so nice and wonderful. You should follow me, or whatever. I feel like when I tried to go back to school, people expected me to be the same, but at the same time, they also didn't treat me like I was myself. They treated me like a damaged, fragile, sort of hollow corpse of who I was.
Man.
They didn't think I was like capable of anything anymore.
That was one of the questions I was going to ask you was, did people treat you differently? And I think you just answered that. I think that too speaks to what we said. I mean, it didn't just attack your cancer, and your chemo just didn't attack your cancer. It attacked your person, and it attacked who you were, and the way people treated you, and everything. And I can't imagine what that was like. Fortunately, I am in the childhood cancer community, but I've not a cancer patient. I've never had cancer, so I don't know what that's like. I mean, people treat me a certain kind of way, but I just think that because they think I'm an asshole, it doesn't really bother me. But certainly after fighting so hard to become the type of athlete that you were, and then fighting to overcome the cancer the first time and the second time and things like that, it's got to be taxing. So this is going to be a tough question, but what keeps you going? Like when all else falls away and you're alone, and this is a tough question, but when you're alone in the quiet moments that you keep by yourself, what keeps you going? What motivates you? What is it you tell yourself?
Yeah, I definitely, a few months in my first round of treatment, I suppose, I really fell apart and was just bawling for hours. Like, I worked so hard. I thought I had already overcome so much adversity to get to where I was, like physically and academically. I had overcome a lot, or so I thought, and things were finally starting to fall into place and work out for me. My hard work was finally starting to pay off, and now it's gone. It meant nothing. I had to start over. And that sucked because I had all of these goals and things that I wanted to do, lots of things I wanted to accomplish. I was like, how the hell am I going to do that now when I can't even sit up on my own? But I was like, okay, this happened. I can't change it. It's not really gonna go away. So I can either sit and sulk in it, I can let it get the best of me, or I can get over it and move on, Everyone has shit in their life. This is my thing to get over. So I just have to pick myself up and do what I gotta do. If I really want to do that, my goal is to play soccer, and I want to go to the Naval Academy so I can be a Marine Corps officer. And, you got to be tough to do that. Everything that they do is to, test your grit and, do you have this sort of, fire and work ethic? And I decided, you know what? I do. So this is what I got to do to get there.
Nice. I like that a lot. I think that it comes across when you speak, and it comes across when you don't speak, that you are a fighter and that you have tenacity and you're not going to take this lying down. And in my mind, that would be exactly who the Naval Academy would want to be there, as somebody with that motivation and tenacity. And I know sort of on a different side of that, I know that when my daughter passed away, I was sort of left in that similar situation too, where I could have sat and wallowed in my shit, or, I could suck it up and I could become a warrior or whatever. I don't like those terms, but you know what I mean. It's just to come up and I didn't want to let it get the best of me, and I hear that in your voice too. And I think you have the ability and the tenacity to be anything that you want to be, and I'm really excited to watch. I'm glad that we're friends now. As soon as the rally was over, I was like, girl, we need to be friends. You and me, you're the little younger female me. You were she had the bullhorn and she was screaming at NCI and she was basically cussing at him, and of course nobody came out to speak to us, nobody addressed us. It's all they keep throwing this propaganda out at us, and then they don't hear our voices. But I'm going to take a minute and I'm going to tell you guys about some of the things that Still Brave has planned, and we'll get back to you in just a second, Kellen. So we're going back to the National Cancer Institute, because the last time that we went there, we had Kellen and some other people that were there, and we protested and we marched and we screamed through the bullhorns, and we asked them, please come out and explain to us why this status quo is okay, why there's an acceptable amount of, I'm just going to call it like it is, why there's an acceptable amount of dead children that prevents you from investing more and allocating more of that annual budget to childhood cancers. You heard Kellen speak about it. There's many different types of childhood cancers, and 4 to 7% of the annual budget split between all of those things means that we're making zero progress. And that's quite frankly the amount of progress that we're making. When my daughter died from childhood cancer in 2009, she was using 30-year-old chemotherapies and treatment protocols. And if your daughter were to be diagnosed, your son or daughter were to be diagnosed with Hodgkin's lymphoma today, you'd be offered the same medicines that essentially killed my daughter. So we're going back to the National Cancer Institute, and I keep looking at their Facebook page, and this is kind of a call out to them, a challenge to them. Why don't you send somebody out, somebody in authority, somebody who can explain to me and can explain to Kellen why this is okay, how you go home and sleep at night knowing this is okay. And we don't want to think that you're our enemy. We want to think that you're a bad person that likes the fact that children are dying. But it's hard for us to wrap our head around the fact that you control the money, you control the reins. And Kellen explained to you guys how, or just explain to all of us really, how that money needs to be appropriated. The years of life lost when a child gets cancer and passes away versus when an adult gets cancer and passes away is dramatic. The life lost is horrendous. And what if one of these children that we're not doing right by were to grow up and find a cure for cancer? So my brain, that makes total sense to me. It's almost like we're looking through different lenses at this thing. But unfortunately, you guys are the ones that control the money. And so we're going back to the National Cancer Institute on June 15th at noon in Bethesda, Maryland. You can find a link in the comments section to Facebook as in a Facebook event link. I want you guys to, just like she said, or we talked about, get off your ass and come out and help us, because if nothing changes, nothing is going to change. I'm going to be there. Kellen's going to be there. I'm going to give Kellen her own damn bullhorn this time. She's going to be in charge, man. I'm just going to follow behind her. So anyways, please look at the link in the comment section just for one day. Just for one day on June 15th, make it your priority. Everybody says, I wish there was something I could do. It's horrible. I wish I could help these kids. For one day, make it your priority and come out to the National Cancer Institute in Bethesda, Maryland, and walk with us. And we challenge you at the National Cancer Institute to send somebody out to speak to us, somebody in authority, just a conversation. That's all we want, is a dialogue, because childhood cancer and cancer in young adults is not rare. It's not. And for you to propagate that is a travesty, and it's almost criminal in my mind. So come out and explain to us how we're wrong, how we've got this wrong, and how we don't understand. That's what we want you to do, and we're challenging you to come and do that. So please look at the link in the comment section and join Kellen and I, and hopefully some other folks out at the National Cancer Institute June 15th at noon. The next thing I want to talk about briefly is the race that Lauren and I are running in October. It's 240-mile ultramarathon through the Moab Desert. That's 240 miles straight. There's a link in the comment section there's a link in the comment section that will show you how you can donate or sponsor one or more miles in that race. Now, I've saved a couple of miles in the race for people, and I'm going to make damn sure that Kellen is one of those miles. We're going to talk about it. So Kellen's going to have a mile in there. So if you guys want to step up and sponsor Kellen's mile and donate some money to Kellen's mile so that we can keep the programs and services that Still Brave offers that are so desperately needed in lieu of the National Cancer Institute getting us a cure, or getting us better, less toxic treatments, safer, less toxic treatments, then please follow the link in the comment section and donate or sponsor one or more miles, including Kellen's mile. Hell, I might sponsor Kellen's mile myself now that I think about it. All right, next thing I want to talk about is our new clothing line. Still Brave has launched a new clothing line to help us, again, with our many programs and services that we offer. The new clothing line, you can find a link in the comment section. We have T-shirts, we have rad hoodies, we have leggings, we have onesies, we have all kinds of stuff and we're adding new items every day. So follow the link in the comment section. Next thing is our tattoo auction and lottery. I'm not going to go into a big discussion about that, but I'm going to say this to you. Tax deductible tattoos. Yes, you heard that right. tax-deductible tattoos. Follow the link in the comment section and find out how you can get you a tax-deductible tattoo. And lastly, before we go back to Kellen, I want to give a shout out again to Lou and Sue Alami and Alami Realty. They are your end-all, be-all, stop-gate. Go there for all your mortgage lending, your buying, your selling and needs. They're not just realtors, they're family. They're my family now. And they're also big supporters of Still Brave. They're coming out and they're helping us to facilitate the barn redo here at the Two Feathers Farmhouse, helping us build a new chicken coop so that we can get the goats and the pony and the chickens and the ducks so that we can have a calm, cool, safe, therapeutic petting farm for children with cancer and their families. We've also gotten a huge 25-foot inflatable movie screen so we can show movies and really have a great time this summer in a COVID-friendly, safe way. So all those things you can find links in the comment section. Now I'm going to go back to Kellen. We got a couple of more things to do before we let her go. So we decided that we're going to start a new segment on the Just Winging It podcast with Tattoo Tom. And because I want this to be less of an interview and more of a conversation, what we're going to do is we're going to allow the guests to ask me questions. So Kellen, you have an opportunity now and you can ask me anything. I know I'm going to regret this. You can ask me anything. Ask me 3 questions and I will answer them truthfully and honestly. In fairness to you, because you've answered all my questions honestly, I will answer any question that you ask me honestly. And I haven't heard these questions yet, so I have no idea what to expect. But please be kind and gentle. I'm new at this.
All right. So you want them one at a time?
Yeah, one at a time.
Okay. The first one's kind of personal. I'm sorry about that, but
Okay.
I think it's kind of important. I'm interested to know and hear.
Okay.
So, what do you want people to know about your daughter, Shayla? Like, about her and her life? And, like, are there any sort of, like, things that you do or don't want people to say or not say kind of in regards to her or her treatment?
Okay, that's a good question, and I would love to answer that because that's a real interesting thing for parents like me who have lost children to cancer, because people act weird and they act funny, and it's almost like sometimes they're afraid to say my daughter Shayla's name as if I'm going to go, oh shit, I forgot my daughter was dead. How dare you remind me? And I'm going to fall and break into a million pieces. Like, I know she died. Like, I'm not stupid. I was there, right? I saw it. I knew she was going to die. The doctors told her that. That's not the part that bothered me. It's the part where she stayed dead all these years that bothers me. But I don't want you to not talk to me about her. I want you to say her name. Ask me about her. One of the things that I found out in the many years that I've been doing this is when a parent loses a child to cancer, every time I've asked them, because you don't know what to say. People don't always know what to say, right? It's not really their fault. But I have found, I'm going to share with you guys something that you can use, because this is probably I don't know much. I'm not really a smart man, but I know this to be true, is when a parent loses a child to cancer and I'm at the funeral or wherever, the first thing I ask them, I'm like, what was he like? What was she like? And it's interesting because their grief and their sadness changes, and all of a sudden they light up and they start saying, "No, man, Jimmy was this, he was that, he was, he was active in this," and it changes, So I want people to ask me. Don't be afraid to say my daughter's name. What I want you to ask me, what was she like? And I'll tell you, she was awesome. She was tenacious like you. She was a lot like you. But she could be bitchy, and she could be a teenager, and she would make me do stuff I didn't want to do, and she wouldn't do things I asked her to do. She wasn't an angel by any stretch of the imagination.
She's a real person.
She's a real person. She wasn't a statistic. She wasn't an angel. She wasn't a warrior. She wasn't any of that shit, that they call her. She was a girl who got cancer and didn't want it. And she fought tough and she fought bravely, and then she died. And but she was a person, and cancer and the treatments took that person away from her. It attacked the person, and I'd like to tell you who she was as a person. So if you see me anywhere, ask me, what was Shayla like? And you'll see me light up. And if you're ever in a situation where you're with a family or a parent of a child who has passed away from cancer, the best, most awesome thing you can say to them is, what was he like? What was she like? Okay. So there's question 1 down. That wasn't too bad. I was nervous.
Right.
I guess question 2.
Okay. So you told me that you've been married to the same woman twice. I want to know the story behind that.
She told you I was going to regret this. All right. So it's not, I mean, it's a true story. So I was married and divorced twice to the same woman. Now, it depends. Like, I mean, I've never had to answer this question publicly before. Usually when, like, a woman asks me that question, I always get real, like this. And I'm always like, well, it's because I believe in love, or some shit like that, right? And then when my buddies ask me about it, I'm like, bro, I don't know. I'm just a glutton for punishment.
Women are crazy.
Yeah, women. I don't know what I was doing. But, the truth of the matter is, like, if you want the real story, so my wife and I had a tumultuous relationship. She's the mother of my 5 other children, and she's, I don't want to say anything bad about her, disparage her. I would never do that. She's the mother of my children. We didn't always get along. Our marriage was always rough and rugged. A lot of it was my fault. A lot of it was her fault. It takes 2 to tango, But so we were married, and then when Shayla got diagnosed, we separated and divorced while I was busy taking care of Shayla. And then when Shayla passed away, I think there was a comfortability and a familiarity with my ex-wife, and so we wound up getting back together, and it was safe. And at that time in my life, I needed that safety and I needed that comfort because I didn't have it. I just lost my daughter, and I didn't
a little bit of support.
Yeah, because nothing made sense, and there was a familiarity there, and unfortunately we did get remarried. And I say unfortunately, not that we got remarried part, but unfortunately we got divorced again shortly thereafter. We were only married the second time for a short period of time, but it makes for a great story. And anytime I screw up or anytime I'm not sure about anything, really I use it all the time. My daughter Abby gets frustrated because I'm constantly saying, bro, what can I say? I was married twice to the same woman. Like, I use that shit for everything. So that's kind of the long and short story of how that happened. But I do believe in love, and I'm also a glutton for punishment too. So it's a little both. All right. Question number 3.
Okay. Last question. Will you get a tattoo with me?
Ooh, in a New York second, I will.
Really?
Yeah. So here's the thing. Not only, nobody's ever really asked me that before. Not only will I get a tattoo with you, but I'll pay for it. I'll set it up.
You don't have to do that.
Girl, I got you. You just, what if you was going to say, Chris, if somebody was going to say something to me to win me over, what do you think it would be, Yeah. So you're in. Like, I'll call my guy as soon as we get done with this podcast, and I'll set it up. Now, interestingly enough, we found out earlier as we were sitting around talking, your oncologist, Dr. Eva Pradal, was Shayla's oncologist. So she went to my boxing match. She still has a picture of Shayla on her desk. So we got to clear it with Dr. Pradal as to when you can get it. But yeah. I'll call my guy today and I'll set it up. Now, what are we going to get, though? What kind of tattoo are we going to get? Are we going to get matching tattoos? Are we going to get different tattoos? What are we going to get?
It's up to you. I've been wanting to get a lotus flower for a while. One of my favorite nurses while I was in treatment, I don't know if it's true or not, but I choose to believe it.
Okay.
She told me that they grow like in the worst conditions and they bloom in darkness.
That's true. I know that to be true. I'm a Buddhist, and the lotus is big imagery in the Buddhist religion or ideology, and it does. It grows in the mud, and without mud and the muck. All right, so here's a great idea. How about you get a tattoo of a lotus flower, and I get a tattoo of a pile of mud or something?
Okay.
All right, let's do something like that. I think it'll be great. Like, I'll get a tattoo of like the swampy whatever, and you can be the lotus flower that grows out of the swamp. We'll figure out some cool way to do something like that. I'll call my guys today. I used to own a tattoo studio, and that tattoo studio is still in business. Shout out to Marrow Inc. Tattoo Studios. They're a great tattoo studio. They've done a lot of tattoos for our families. If a child passes away, they'll do memorial tattoos, and they don't charge us anything. And when I auction off part of my body every year, they always step up and do the tattoos for free so that they can give back to Still Brave. And so you and I are going to go to Marlow Inc. Tattoo, and we're going to get a lotus flower and some damn mud as soon as Dr. Padal clears you. I tell you what, man, I knew this podcast was going to be cool because my day just got made. Number one, you gave me, I'm going to have to talk to you about, we're going to have to negotiate if I'm going to be able to use it or not. But you gave me the catchphrase or the phrase of what I've been spent 15 years trying to come up with. You said that to me today when you said chemotherapy doesn't just attack the cancer, it attacks the person. So I'm going to figure out how I can use that. So you made my day there. And the second thing, you invited me to get a tattoo with you. And we're going to make that shit happen. I'm definitely going to do it. So I want to thank you so much for coming out here. I know it was a long way. I think it's super rad that you broke out of the Ronald McDonald house to come here. And I'm glad that you're my friend more than anything. And I'm really looking forward to getting to know you better. And we're going to stay in touch, and we're going to work together on what we can do to be more impactful at the NCI rally that we have coming up in June. And so another challenge to NCI, you're not just dealing with Tattoo Tom. Now you're dealing with Tattoo Tom and Kellen. And soon she's going to be Tattoo Kellen. And you guys are done. Forget about it. You better come out and talk to us before we get real aggressive. All right. So listen, I want to thank you again. Thank you so much for coming out. We're going to do one more quick segment and finish things up, and then we're going to let you guys go. So we have this segment thanks to Chris's daughter, Rachel, another childhood cancer survivor, called Who Is This Dude Anyway? And basically what that is, it's me giving you guys a little information about who I am, what molded me, what crafted me, what influenced me, what inspired me growing up or whatever. And so in the previous episodes, I've shared some books with you that I read that were extremely impactful to me. So today I want to talk to you about one of my heroes. I've got two heroes, and that first hero is the queen of skydiving, Caoilinn Clay. She was a real person. She had more skydives than any woman in the entire world, more free fall times. She had almost 20,000 skydives before, sadly, she died in a tragic skydiving accident in her 60s. She's an amazing woman, and I worked with her, and I hung out with her, and she always supported me and Still Brave. Even when I was a knucklehead, she was always there. So she was one of my heroes, and I've only ever had two. My other hero was that fella up there, Billy Jack. Billy Jack's not real. Billy Jack is a character in a movie by an actor named Tom Laughlin. But let me tell you a little bit about this. So the movie Billy Jack was done in the 70s, the early 70s, and it's basically, it's not politically correct to call it that today, but it was billed as a half-breed Navajo Indian former Green Beret stands up for, this pacifist hippie school. And it's kind of interesting because I rewatched it recently, and it really speaks to kind of how things are today, because Billy Jack was like the savior or the protector or the guardian of this pacifist hippie school. It's kind of like a Montessori school. And the townspeople were, I'm just going to say it, were ultra right-wing, racist, just shitty people. And Billy Jack, unfortunately for the townspeople, was not a pacifist. He did not get down with the way they were treating the Indians, the way they were treating the people at the school, and he fought back and he protected them. And I think if you watch this movie, it'll give you a lot of insight. I saw this movie when I was probably about 6 or 7 or 8 years old. I was really young, and it impacted me so much that I think looking back, I think I've lived my life, based on sort of the principles that my father was never in my life. I don't know who my father is. I don't even know if he's alive or dead today. So Billy Jack is the one that sort of laid out for me what it is to be a man. And, interestingly enough, it was one of Elvis's favorite movies. Also another friend, I wouldn't say a hero of mine because Elvis had his own demons, but it was one of Elvis's favorite movies. It was the first original blockbuster movie. The actor Tom Laughlin used the movie, the marketing and the promotion of the movie, in a way that had never been used before. It was the very first blockbuster film. And later on, after the success of Billy Jack, which just was an independent film, films like Jaws and Star Wars used that same marketing approach and became the movies that they were because of the groundwork that Tom Laughlin laid down with Billy Jack. If you adjust for inflation, Billy Jack, all these years later, again, adjusting for inflation, is still the highest grossing independent film of all time. And Billy Jack is just, I keep calling him Billy Joel. Billy Jack is so badass. You got to see this guy. He's just, he's the hero we needed then, and I needed then, and he's the hero that we need today, and that I need today. Marlon Brando said, there's one scene in the movie, and I won't ruin it for you, but Marlon Brando said that particular scene was at the time the greatest cinematic scene he had ever seen. And John Travolta said he became an actor because of that scene in that movie. When Quentin Tarantino and Brad Pitt were working on that Once Upon a Time in America, they purposely sat down and watched Billy Jack, and they modeled that character after Tom Laughlin and the things that he did. They said Tom Laughlin could have played that character. I think his name was Cliff, could have played that character. It's a great movie, and I encourage you to see it. The song One Tin Soldier, if If you've never heard it, it's by a band called Coven, and it's an old hippy dippy song from the early 70s. But give it a listen, because I think that really speaks to who and what I am, and I think it speaks to the disconnect that we have in society today, in our culture. It's something that we've lost. And interestingly enough, Tom Laughlin, later on, after his acting career had sort of gone by the wayside, he got interested in politics, and he was always very much an advocate for Indian rights and things like that. And in 1992, out of protest, he actually ran for president of the United States. He said, though, that he was probably the least qualified candidate running for president, with the exception of George Bush. I'm telling you, this guy was money. He absolutely 100% was money. So if you get a chance, please check out the movie Billy Jack. I've got a huge tattoo on my leg. He's one of my heroes. The only other one was Caoilinn Clay. I'm going to talk more about Caoilinn Clay in some future episodes for sure. She's got a lot, there's a lot there to unpack with her. She was an amazing woman. And last thing before I go, in case this wasn't enough, there's also The Trial of Billy Jack, which was part 2. You got to see this one too, because it's just as good. Billy Jack and the trial of Billy Jack. So that's another little bit of who is this dude anyway. If you want to know what molded and formed my my ideals of what it is to be a man, it was Billy Jack, and it stands true today. When I watched the movie recently with my daughter Abby for the first time, I still stand by everything that I learned from that movie. So check it out. You'll be glad you did. So anyways, Kellen, thanks again a million for coming out today. We're going to have you on another episode. I mean, I could talk to you all day long, and we're going to talk a lot and in the coming days. And I'm real excited to get a tattoo with you. So I want to thank you guys from the bottom of my heart for showing up today. This has been another episode of the Just Winging It podcast with Tattoo Tom. Still brave, Shayla. Still brave, baby.